How do you view yourself? How do you view yourself in your own mind? What does your subconscious mind say about you? It can be hard to figure these things out. It can be hard to even conceptualize the fact that your subconscious mind, that there is something inside of you known as your subconscious mind, and that it can have a idea about yourself that you're not completely aware of. That can be hard to understand. You may believe that what you think is all there is. Your conscious thinking is all that you have. Well, let me tell you something. It's not. There's your subconscious mind, the unconscious, what resides deep inside of us. The shadow. These sides of ourselves that, unless we take enough time to realize, we will stray away from our entire life, and we will avoid the very idea of it. Okay? Now, what am I talking about here? I'm talking about the sides of ourselves that harbor these ideas that likely aren't the prettiest. That they are part of ourselves that we avoid it. Why do we avoid it? Because it's painful to look at it. Maybe it will send into disarray our idea of ourself, that are like our conscious thinking self. Like, we may think we're really good at this and this and that, but in reality, we're just in a small enough circle to where we feel that we're really good at it. If we were to really dive deep and say, hey, you know what? There's probably some people who are better than me at this, and we go into circles and find that, that's when we have to face our shadow that says, oh man, this hurts, this sucks, I thought I was really good at this. The little side of our ego that was clinging on to that idea that you were the best. All right, that's just one example. It gets much deeper than that, where we feel that we are inadequate as a human being, as a person living in a society. And it reigns true into our other areas of our life, whether we realize it or not. You see, we all live up to our own self-fulfilling prophecy, meaning what we believe of ourselves is going to come true. So that means your self-image is the most powerful thing that you have. But we don't realize this. I'll tell you a little bit about my story, about myself, about my journey through creating a new self-image. You see, I grew up this kid who, I was in by no way, shape, or form from a bad home. I had loving parents. And I grew up through life trying to figure things out for myself. Though my parents were loving and we didn't go without by any means, one side was, more narcissistic, one side was more people-pleasing. And it's funny how that happens, right? You may find yourself in situations like that where you're a people-pleaser and you attract narcissists. It's trying to teach you something, let me tell you. But yeah, I grew up in this household like that, where one side was very oppressive and one side was very submissive, right? Now, they both cared and loved for me, but this dynamic of the relationship proved hard. It proved itself to be a hard relationship to foster a child within, to a certain degree, as far as to the most efficient manner, like having a plan and putting it into action. I don't think my parents ever truly had a plan for my life other than raising me with love, and I am utterly and completely grateful. I can never pay them back, right? Go ahead and say that. But my point is that these sides of their shadow is what kept them from being as best a team as they possibly could be. Let's think about it, to take it out of context a little bit. Let's think about it like an Olympic team. Okay? Let's say you got 6 Olympic rowers. One guy, they all got long arms. The team leader, he's got a little bit shorter arms. Okay? But he's a really good rower. He always has been ever since high school, whatever. Well, that team leader, let's say he's got a really high ego coming into the college team, coming into the Olympic team. All right? He thinks he's going to be the best. He's really got good leadership, but the one part where he's lacking is his shadow says, hey man, you got to be the best rower too. Well, they go through a tip. It takes them away from their complete presentness in the games and the practicing, whatever it is, until that team leader realizes, hey, my strength is being a leader. I don't have to be the best rower. And how could I be? These guys got long arms, longer legs, they have the physical capabilities that I don't. So though I can be really good and still be an addition to the team, my primary focus is not being what they are. It's being what I am. Okay? And without him realizing that, he slows the team down. He breaks down the different cohesion of the team. Maybe they never even make it to the Olympics because of that. Until he realizes it. Okay? So to bring it back into context, we must be the most efficient team if we want to live the most efficient life, to live a life of most fulfillment. All right? And it's a progressive realization. You're not going to be perfect tomorrow. All right? Back to my story. Sorry, it's kind of trailing on here. But, so my parents weren't the best team. So there was a lot of confusion for me. They had their fights. They were always in a fight of some sort, and we went through the tribulations we did there. But personally, I was confused at a lot of stages. I was confused on what was right and wrong. I was confused on who to be truthful with at times. I was confused on how to follow the leadership that I had. Right? And I always felt loved. I'll say it again, but I learned to be not exactly expressive. I didn't know how to be expressive, right? Between speaking with the one side where it didn't feel like they cared about hearing my emotions, right? Because that's just how it was. Not that there was a lack of care by any means, but and the other side was always caught up in their own emotional stuff, in issues to where I didn't feel the need to express. I taught myself hey, deal with it on your own, man. You're good. You'll figure it out. You'll be straight. Don't worry about it too much. But in that process of learning that, I wasn't dealing with my emotions all the time. I wasn't dealing with the ways I felt. I was sweeping it under the rug, which we all know is very easy to do. So this goes on. We grow older, and the relationship gets even more rocky, and things go to a shit show, so to say. And this is in the midst of my teenage years where I'm getting into sports and I'm developing and becoming a young man. And I didn't have my father in the picture at all at that point. And so here I was, me and my mother's relationship got stronger than ever. But there must be a balance. For a most efficient team, there must be most efficient efforts on all sides. Because not everybody can do the whole thing, right? My mother could not give the full. She couldn't do feminine and masculine energy, just like my father couldn't do masculine and feminine energy, right? There must be that balance. I didn't have that balance. So my mother did as best she could, and our relationship was great, but I didn't have the masculine energy for my father, and I was still very confused. I was still very lost in my endeavors and what I was trying to do, what I was trying to be like, right? Going into sports, playing sports, struggling with sports, struggling the whole time, getting my ass kicked, because it was just a weird time for me. I didn't have that full expressive energy inside of me, or at least I didn't know how to find it, right? I had great coaches though, and that helped. So I kept moving on, kept doing my thing, and it wasn't, and then I quit sports, right? Quit the relationship I had, and went to a shit show. Went to a shit show of doing drugs, doing different things, just being an idiot, for lack of better words. And it was in that side that I was facing these lower sides of myself, or not even facing, I was indulging in this lower side of myself, this fuck it, who cares? Just let it be. Be yourself. Have fun. That was the biggest thing, have fun. Here for a good time, not a long time kind of idea. That was my philosophy of life for some time. And again, this was my shadow fucking being king of the castle, being living in tyranny of the shadow. My conscious mind slipped to the wayside for the most part. I mean, I still wanted to get a job and I still worked out, but pretty much everything else slipped away from me for some time. It was fuck it, how can I have fun? I don't care who I hurt. All right? So I slipped into this place, and it was my shadow, my ego, reigning in control, eliminating the efforts of my conscious thinking for the most part. So thankfully, the good Lord, the universe, whatever you want to say, sent my now fiance, into my life, and I recovered. I mean, it took some time, but I got away from the bad environments. I got away from the bad habits. I got away from all this silly shit over time, and now we have a beautiful daughter. We're working on everything. I am more purpose-driven than ever before. But it all started with me getting out of those environments. And in that process, I began to face myself, to face my shadow, to get back in control of my life altogether. To say, hey, you know what, this isn't working right, man. I got to do what I got to do. Right? And that's what I did. And slowly but surely, you build upon that foundation, right? And you're tearing away the old wreckage, and you're building upon a new foundation of what is rightfully important to me. And as I've told you before, financials, physicality, mentality, emotionality. That's all that matters. Everything that matters can fit into them. And I've been focused on that for the last 4 or 5 years now. Okay? But it all started with facing my shadow. With saying, hey, this side of me, why is it here? What is this caused by? And taking it back into my younger years of being a child and realizing that I didn't know how to express myself my entire childhood. I mean, I remember struggling writing in school, struggling being a poet, or doing poetry, struggling to talk about myself, and I still struggle to talk about my emotions, so to say, at certain times. Right? So it's like when I broke into this crazy time of it being a shit show, I was just trying to express myself. My shadow was working with my inner child and just working in this negative manner to express whatever was inside, and it came out in some very ugly ways. But it is what it is, and it made me who I am today. So this has been a very in-depth video about myself. I hope that it somehow helps to hear about my story. But I want you to think about your life. I want you to think about where you are right now and what's caused you to get there. Was it your true conscious thinking that got you there? Or was it something inside that shifted your perspective on a certain aspect or a certain light in your life that sent you down a path that if you had the chance to choose one another again, you probably wouldn't choose it again? Are there situations like that in your life? Have you been in situations like that before? Most of us have, whether we realize it or not. Because our shadow is something we must face in our own progressive time. I mean, this is something you work with for your entire life, if you ever even choose to acknowledge it. All right? So, look into this concept. Another creator, much bigger than I am at this point, does an amazing job of talking about this in the popular nowadays, is Clark Kegley. I'm not exactly sure how to say his name, but he makes amazing content on this kind of stuff. A philosopher, or I'm not exactly sure what you consider him, but Carl Jung, he's very profound in this subject, and he's from way back in the day. You hear Jordan Peterson talk about him. Very powerful stuff. He would obviously be able to articulate everything I've said here in a much more in-depth way. But I hope that this application from the present moments, from my life, helps you understand. It helps you think about it to where you can meditate and journal on it and make a difference in your own perception of life. Because if you don't choose to accept your shadow and face it and see life for what it is, really, you'll be living in a sense of fantasy for some time. Like I said earlier, you think you're really good, you're the best at something because you think you're the best at something because you don't put yourself in situations where it's obvious that you're not. So you live your entire life thinking you're the best at this, but it doesn't really amount to anything because it's not the truth. You're living in a fantasy. Right? Accepting our shadow is about accepting where we're truly at in the world. The hierarchy of our life, the hierarchy of who we are and how much value we bring to the marketplace, to the world. If we don't accept that there are sides of ourselves that aren't so pretty, it's harder to it's impossible, I should say, to really get ahead in life to be where we want to be. Right? So look into it. I'll stop here. I hope you enjoyed this. Comment something below. If this was insightful to any degree, let me know. And if you have something that made you think about, let me know about that as well. Share it with someone who needs to hear it. I hope you enjoyed it. Let's go get them, guys. Let's go do this another dang day. Let's go.